Hello everyone. In the previous session, we have seen the customer identification process and the customer due diligence process. In this session, let's look at another two important activities, the risk assessment and the name screening process. So first, let's understand what is the risk assessment process. Now, risk assessment process is a process where the bank or a financial institution will classify the customer into various risk categories. Now, there are three main risk categories: low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Now, the first important task is the bank or a financial institution will look into various parameters and they will classify the customer into low risk customers, medium risk customers, and high risk customers. Now, what are the factors? Okay, the factors will be, for example, one, what is the geographic location of the customer? Okay, are they based in some high risk jurisdictions, or are they based in some jurisdictions where considered to be low risk? So first, they will look into the customer geographic location. The first aspect. The second aspect can be based on the ownership structure. If there is a very clear and the simple ownership pattern, then it is easy for the banks to identify who is the ultimate owners of the company or a organization. However, there are some organizations or where the ownership structure needs to be very complex. So based on the ownership structure and how it is structured, how the organization is structured, the risk assessment can be done. So this is the second. The third factor can be based on the business models. There are certain businesses, for example, casinos, money transfer businesses, corresponding banking services, and other services are considered to be high risk for the posed to be high risk for the financial institution or a bank. So any customer offering these services are deemed to be high risk. So the risk assessment can be based on factors like geographic location, what is the what is the business ownership structure, and it can be based on the type of business which they are actually carrying on. Now let's understand how this risk assessment is actually done. So basically, the bank will be using a risk application or a risk scoring application. It will give a score, let's say for example, a score of 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest risk and 10 being the highest risk. So based on these factors, the bank or a financial institution will study into the customer, who is the customer, geographic location, what is their business, ownership structure, what are the businesses actually they're carrying on and where they are actually carrying on the business, who are the customers, who are the suppliers. Based on all these factors, the bank or a financial institution will perform the score risk assessment. Now for every aspect, the scores will be registered from between a score of 1 to 10 will be registered, 1 being a low risk and 10 being the highest risk. So finally, all this score will be added up. For example, let's say we are onboarding a client for a financial institution is onboarding a client who is actually based in US. Now, US is considered to be the very low risk countries because they are highly regulated country. So they give a risk of 2. Now, let's say the customer is into, it's a listed companies. Now, listed companies have means is highly regulated entities and such so that they are actually considered again based on the company type, they are actually considered as 2. And the kind of service they are actually offering. Let's say this is a manufacturing company and is not deemed to be high risk. So if you based on 3 parameters, the customer have scored 2, 2, and 2. Means if you average it out, they get a score of 2. So out of scale of 1 to 10, the customer have actually scored 2 and on average. So this customer considered to be low risk. Similarly, if any customer gets a score of let's say between 4, more than 4 and less than 7, they'll be considered as a medium risk, and anybody who scores more than 7 and around less than 10, they are considered to be high risk. So based on this, the customers are classified into low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Now why this is very important is the bank carry out the due diligence activities on a one-time basis, on ongoing basis axis. So they can understand what type of due diligence can be done. For example, if it's a low risk client, they will provide the simple due diligence. If the client is medium risk, they will perform a standard due diligence. Or if the client is seen as a high risk client, they will perform enhanced due diligence. So for performing customer due diligence and what type of customer due diligence they need to perform, risk score is very, very important. So that is first aspect. Now once the customer risk score is done, then there is something called as a name screening. Name screening it's basically a comparison process. So the every bank or a financial institution will maintain a list called as a watch list. Now the watch list has the names of entities or organization. It has like all the sanctioned entities. It has a PEPs. It has a economic offenders list is there. Now the name screening process is basically the bank need to compare uh, their prospective customer name with the existing watch list to ensure that the customer is not part of that watch list. Now the watch list contains sanctioned entities. The watch list contains PEPs. PEPs politically exposed person. Sanction, for example. Now what is sanctions? So basically, sanction is a restriction put by one country or other country, or sometimes the sanction can be levied by international organizations like United Nations. So basically, there are four types of sanctions are there. First one is targeted sanction. Now, targeted sanction is a type of sanction which is targeted to an individual or an organization or a country. So this is known as a targeted sanction. The second type of sanction could be sectoral sanctions, where the sanctions are levied but on a particular location. Most of the times, the sanctions are levied on a weapon manufacturing or nuclear energy. So we can see the currently what's been going on in Iran, right? That's an example of sanction which has been levied on Iran's nuclear energy. Third, the sanctions can be economic sanctions. Economic sanctions are those sanctions which has been put on the import and export controls. So they can have penalties or additional duties on imports or export. So those can be economic sanctions. And finally, we have a comprehensive sanction. Comprehensive sanctions are sanctions on trade and commerce, plus there is a sanctions on lending and borrowing. So these are some of the types of sanctions. Now all that entity which comes under sanctions their name will be there in the watch list. Now who can levy sanctions? So the sanctions can be levied by can be United Nations. United Nations can levy the sanctions, or in European Union, the European Union can levy the sanctions on any other entities, or in US, an organization, an entity called as the OFAC, they can put sanctions on other entities. So these are some of the entities which can put the sanctions. Once they come into sanctions, all this the entities or individuals or any country which comes under sanctions, those will be mentioned in the sanction list. So the bank will do a name screening check, means they will do a comparison between the prospective customer to check that whether they are not part of any sanctions or not. Next is PEPs. So what is PEP? As per FATF, PEPs are politically exposed person, means persons who have a considerable political authority. Now the politicians have a greater control over the economic decisions of a country. So politicians are considered to be high risk. Now the PEPs can be domestic or the PEPs can be foreign. For example, all the domestic PEPs includes your somebody who is a member of parliament or a member of state legislative assemblies, or prime minister of a country, the chief minister of a country, or the other cabinet ministers are considered to be the domestic PEPs. And the foreign PEPs are those PEPs who normally represent uh, other country, but they live in other country. For example, the embassies or ambassadors considered to be the foreign PEPs. So in the watch list, along with the sanction police, there also will be the PEP's name will be mentioned. So the bank have to ensure that the persons is the prospective customer which they are onboarding are not part of this. So this is what we call as a name screening. So basically, in this session, we had a look at how the risk assessment is done and how the screening check is done. A name screening check is done by the banks or financial institutions. Thanks for your time.